Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Fandom Media. I'm your host, Kyle. The mysteries are finally beginning to be explained in episode 7 with only a couple of episodes left in Wandavision. And this episode, absolutely packed with Easter eggs, references to the MCU and Marvel Comics, and we finally get a post-credit scene that sets up the third and final act of the show. In this video, we're going to break down how this episode broke the fourth wall, all of those awesome Marvel Easter eggs, and that huge revelation that Agnes is the witch Agatha Harkness. Agatha shares a long and complicated history with Wanda, and while she isn't technically a villain in the comics, it certainly looks like she could be the main antagonist of the show. And I gotta tell you, I have a hell of a theory for you about Agatha's plan that I will explain a little bit later in this video. Episode 7 of WandaVision is all about explanations. We see that Wanda begins to learn the truth about the false reality around her in Westview as Vision learns about his tragic fate from Darcy. It delivers some answers on who's been pulling the strings behind the scenes by introducing a new villain and also a new superhero, with Monica finally gaining her Spectrum powers in the comics. Once again, Elizabeth Olsen is front and center, delivering another amazing performance as Wanda. It's said that Elizabeth Olsen has reportedly been hospitalized from severe back pain from carrying the entire MCU on her back. But jokes aside, honestly, I have loved her performances in all of the other sitcoms where it was more traditionally shot, but I particularly love the homage to Modern Family in episode 7. The episode title's promise is fulfilled, breaking the fourth wall, as not only Wanda but the other characters within Westview address the audience in interview snippets like a documentary confessional. Elizabeth Olsen's hand movements and emphasized delivery is a near-perfect match of Julie Bowen's Claire Dunphy from Modern Family. Her deadpans are perfectly delivered as she recalls events from the previous episode as if they were nothing more than a drunken night. We see that Wanda is clearly burnt out and depressed from having to relive her worst nightmares and traumas over and over and over again in Westview. The commercials in WandaVision have so far been focused on Wanda's past experience of trauma, and in this episode, it's extremely important because it directly references something called the Nexus. The Nexus commercial in this episode is very revealing because it tells us what Agatha's plans actually are and what Wanda's role is in these plans. The Nexus commercial is talking about Wanda. The commercial talks about if you're depressed, which Wanda definitely is, and it says that you can take this Nexus pill that will anchor you back to the reality of your choice. The Nexus pill, though, seems like it has some pretty big side effects, including feeling your feelings, confronting the truth, seizing your destiny, and possibly even more depression. The commercial tells us exactly what's about to happen to Wanda. It's revealed later in the episode that Agatha is the director for what's happening within these sitcoms, and I believe that Agatha is going to get Wanda to confront the truth and seize the destiny that she has planned out for Wanda. In Wanda and Agatha's first conversations, Agatha brings up to Wanda that she should get pregnant and start a family with Vision. There's so many things that are off about this, like Wanda magically getting pregnant, Wanda having twin boys, the kids magically aging up instantaneously when Agnes shows up, Pietro's relationship with the kids, and comments about Westview and children, and now Agnes babysitting Billy and Tommy while Wanda is depressed and Vision isn't there with Wanda. Vision's intuitions about this whole situation have really been spot on, as he remarks that it's pretty odd that Agnes is offering her help. That's pretty weird to me, and it's almost as if she is looking into a crystal ball to see what's happening in their home. She's also conveniently in most of the scenes where Billy and Tommy is present, which begs the question of why she is so interested in children. And I believe I have the answer to that question. I believe Agatha isn't working alone and that she's working with Ralph, her husband, who we haven't seen yet, who is actually the villain Mephisto. Now, Wanda was impregnated by magic like she was in the comics in the House of M storyline. In this comic storyline, we see Wanda alter the fabric of reality, suffering from a mental breakdown after she loses her kids that she has with Vision. The children were conceived using magic from 2 fragments of Mephisto's soul. I think it's the reason why we haven't seen Ralph, Agnes's husband, now revealed to be Agatha in the show, and it's because he needs to be summoned into our current realm. Agnes takes Wanda's kids and reveals herself in the lair to actually be Agatha to Wanda, and this creepy ass looking basement is actually full of imagery of the devil if you look close enough. There's also hexagons, they're all over the place, and symbols within the hexagons, which I personally believe to be depictions of different multiverses, including this one, which I believe to be a representation of Mephisto's realm of hell. Now, I believe we actually saw Mephisto for the first time in this episode. It's just when he was in his extra-dimensional form, and I believe Mephisto is the cicada we saw on the drapes in the living room before Wanda goes in the basement and meets up with Agatha. In Marvel lore, Mephisto is an extra-dimensional demon who first appeared as a fly, and while a cicada isn't a fly, the MCU has been known to switch things up a little, and I personally find it very interesting the cicadas hibernate and lay dormant underground for 2 to 17 years, depending on the species. Now, I haven't seen too many cicadas in my lifetime, but when I asked my friend what cicadas sound like, he said they sound as loud as hell, which is kind of fitting considering I think this is Mephisto, and that Billy goes and complains to Wanda that he's hearing loud noises in his head, which I think is actually connected to this scene where Wanda is on the couch and sees the cicada and hears this loud noise coming from the cicada. Speaking of terrifying, the book that is displayed at Agatha's lair also has huge implications for WandaVision and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's a strong possibility the book we saw in episode 7 is the Darkhold. Now, I'm going to do a completely separate video on this topic and how it affects things going forward, so be on the lookout for that video in the next couple of days. Agatha and Mephisto weren't the only big reveals of this episode, though. We also get the reveal that Monica now has her Spectrum powers after re-entering the Hex. In episode 6, we found out that Monica's repeated exposure to the Hex started changing her cells on a molecular level. And in episode 7, she goes through the Hex for a third time, even furthering that process. This was my favorite scene of the episode, as we get to see all of the cool different versions of Monica splitting apart as she's entering the Hex's magic, and also a really nice Easter egg and callback to some words from her mom Maria Rambeau and also Captain Marvel. From what we see in the episode, it looks like Monica can now see a new spectrum of light and energy, and while we don't know the full extent of her powers, she's able to hold her own with Wanda in this episode, and that's a pretty big deal considering she was thrown through a whole house in episode 4 in the first time she encountered Wanda and when she aggravated her and let her know that this was a false reality. One thing I've also really loved about WandaVision so far is Monica's evolution as a character. She has really come so far in such a short time, and yeah, she's really been the only one who's been able to break through to Wanda. Unfortunately for her though, Agnes conveniently shows up and ushers Wanda away so that she can't break her out of the Hex. She is also featured in the after credit scene, which is nice. We haven't been able to go to the movies for a while, and now we're getting our after credit scene in TV, which is awesome. But she's putting her new powers to use, tracking Agatha's magic down to where she revealed herself to Wanda. When she opens the bunker, all of the vines we saw in the previous scene with Wanda and Agatha are actually pulsating with a purple glow until she's interrupted by Quicksilver, which is kind of weird. Her eyes are more of a purple hue, like the vines we see throughout Agatha's basement, as opposed to like the light blue color we saw earlier in the episode. She does look terrified when all this happens, so I'm hoping she doesn't fall under Agatha's control and her magic because she's exposed to these vines, but it would be a pretty bad scenario if she also becomes controlled like Wanda, leaving only a couple of options to really solve this problem within the Hex. Vision and Darcy, though, make a pretty awesome team, and I love seeing them as a duo in episode 7. Vision does make it so Darcy is aware of what's happening within the Hex. We know that Darcy got sucked in there because she was handcuffed to the front of one of those vehicles, so perhaps they are the ones who are able to help out in some sort of way with Wanda and Monica being more under Agatha's control. Vision does fly off though after being stuck in traffic with Darcy for what seems to I don't know, half an hour or so. He suspects that it's Wanda that's the one that's impeding their progress, but as we find out, Agatha is the one that's in control of everything that's happening with Vision and Darcy and all around Westview. We find out that Agatha is the one that killed Sparky, which is rude. We also find out that she was the one who made Pietro go to Wanda and was just enjoying a nice glass of wine on their lawn. That's pretty insidious if you ask me. That's pretty evil to send a different version of Pietro to Wanda and get her to be even more emotional. For now, she seems like she's the puppet master pulling the strings within Westview until, in my opinion, Mephisto gets summoned into this realm. We also find out a little bit more about Director Hayward's plans in this episode when Jimmy lets Monica know that Darcy actually made it through Hayward's second firewall. Hayward takes more of a backseat to Monica in this episode, but it turns out he has a blueprint and schematic of Vision's body, and that he wasn't trying to decommission Vision at all. He was trying to bring him back online. This likely lends credence to the theory that Hayward is a sort of mix between Boulevard Trask and William Stryker in the MCU, and that he's trying to create the Sentinels and sentient weapons within the Hex to kill the remaining Avengers, Wanda, and the X-Men. With only 2 episodes left, and with Hayward launching his plans now that the Hex has stopped expanding, we're likely to find out exactly what his true intentions and plans are for this situation. All in all, I really enjoyed this episode. There was so much to like about it. Great performances by the actors and huge reveals, setting up the final 2 episodes to, I think, go out with the bang, everyone. I think it's going to be a really awesome final 2 episodes. So give me all your thoughts down below, all of your theories, and any Easter eggs I might have missed in this breakdown. I'm going to be continuing to analyze episode 7, so be on the lookout for more WandaVision videos throughout the week. I'm actually going to do one on Agatha. I think that would be super fun. Talk about her son a little bit, who could be involved in this. Talk about Mephisto. We're going to do a huge video on Mephisto. So that'll be super fun. We'll talk about Hayward's plan, Monica's powers, we'll talk about Spectrum, and we'll talk about more. Thanks for watching, everyone. I will see you all in the next video.